Ragland. I am pleased to co-chair the Audit and Accountability Committee for Columbus Board of Education. I am joined by our co-chair, Ms. Board Member Carol Beckerly, as well as our auditor. Madam Auditor, would you please call the roll?
Chair Ragland.
Here.
Ms. Beckerly.
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Vajon.
Here.
Ms. Adair. And Mr. Jordan.
Here.
And you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Madam Auditor. I'd like to start this year by thanking this committee for your service over 2020, a tumultuous year to say the least for all of us. But I really want to express our gratitude to you for your dedicated service, your patience with us as we transition from an in-person environment to a virtual environment, and all that we had to endure throughout the year. Our students are better off because of your dedication. And I wanted to make sure that I gave you my personal thank you. And I'm sure Madam Beckerly would like to interject on that. But thank you so much for all that you mean to this district through your service. Madam Co-Chair.
Yes. I echo everything Jane said, but I also want to say that, as I got more oriented during the course of the year, because it was my first year, I became a little bit increasingly in awe of how much you all contribute and appreciate everything you do. It helps us out immensely to have your expertise guiding us. So thank you, sincerely.
So to start this meeting off today, we have the agenda before you. The minutes from the last meeting were sent to you in advance. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the November meeting 2020.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Please call the roll.
Chair Ragland.
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Vajon.
Yes.
Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
And that motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 1 on our agenda is committee operations. Madam Auditor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Chair Ragland, before we get started, if I would like to just propose one change to the agenda, item 4, external audits by outside entities. The original agenda had 2 items under that category. One, I was able to notify the committee would not be happening because the presenter was out ill. And then the second one is no longer, in my opinion, necessary because I have since gotten clarification and have been advised that that issue was actually resolved in November. I just wasn't aware. So if it's okay with you, we can just remove item 4 off of the agenda.
Certainly. I tell you what, since we did have it listed here, I will entertain a motion to approve today's agenda with the change articulating the removal of item number 4 from the agenda completely. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Vajon.
Yes.
Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
And Chair Ragland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that change there, the first item under committee operations, every year there are certain things that the committee, undertakes. And one of the things that you all wanted to review this year was some proposed changes. I'm sorry, let me back up. The first thing that I'll go over is the committee calendar. Was getting ahead of myself. So with the committee calendar, what that is, and you all received a copy of it, hopefully you probably can't see, but it's Audit Committee Calendar of Activities, calendar year 2021. And basically this is just a guide to make sure things that the committee needs to have come to their attention is at least calendared. I don't try to calendar it to the month, but I do try to make sure relevant things come to you at least once a quarter. So I'm not sure, it was sent out to the committee ahead of time. I'm not sure if you wanted to go through it page by page, or if there were any questions that I could answer. I will kind of leave that up to how the committee wants to move forward.
Do you have the ability to share your screen and pull that?
Let's see. Yes, just give me a second.
Members of the committee, have you had the opportunity to review the calendar for the 2021 calendar year? I'm seeing some heads shaking. I'm seeing.
I have, yes.
We have.
Yes.
Okay, we have. Is there any unreadiness around the calendar? Okay, the one thing I
None
do
here.
I'm sorry.
I said none here. So just,
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Please, Mr. Jordan.
No concerns. I thought you were looking for a response. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
It looks like someone's come to my rescue and has put the calendar up. Mr. O'Connor, do you have the calendar up?
I do.
Okay, do I need to give you permission to share your screen or?
He's doing it, I think.
Okay, great. You can tell we rehearsed this, so sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. So the first page are general committee operations, and you can see there are things such as approve the calendar of meetings for the upcoming year. Well, you did that, I believe, in December, so that's why that X is blocked off. The next item is to review the ANA committee charter, which you will have before you today, at least to review it. If you wanted to take action and vote on it, of course, that's up to the committee if you wanted to review it and then take action at a later date. I do know that the board is looking at all of the committee charters, so it might just make sense to make any changes that you all want and then have it all ready to be adopted when the board adopts all the other charters. The third thing is new committee orientation. Well, we don't have any new committee members, so that's why there's nothing checked off on that block. The next bullet is the audit committee calendar of activities. I like to try to have this approved, if not in the January meeting, at least by February, so it can at least guide our work through the rest of the year. Consider and plan for succession and audit committee members. That probably is something that we will need to do, as I know some of you have been on the committee for quite some time. You'll hear no complaints from me as far as letting you roll off, but you might want to at some point, do something else. So that probably is something that we do need to discuss. The forgive me, I don't have my glasses on. Report regularly to BOE execution of duties and responsibilities. There's nothing under that category. And that's really just something that if the chair feels there's something to report, or the co-chair, then you all could do that. I know you did have a couple of meetings regarding the goals for myself and my evaluation, and you did that as you felt you needed to do that. Kevin, if you could go up just a little bit, internal audit. The next bullet number 2, is review with the internal auditor at least annually some of our operational, our charter, the organizational independence of the department, which I will get to later under my report. Just keep going. Slow down, Kevin. Review and recommend the Board of Education's to the Board of Education the annual audit work plan, which you do in the 3rd quarter, which basically it happens in June and then it gets presented to the board in August. So this whole next section are things that I just want to make sure that they're calendared and they don't get overlooked. Okay, you can go to the next section, Kevin. I think it's external, or let's see. This next area deals with risk management, and these are reports from other senior level leaders in the organization. And we like for them to come at least twice a year and provide updates on issues such as safety and security, information and technology. We also like to have our chief of operations come and talk about any other operational risks that he or she sees the district having to deal with. And then we also like to have I believe that's the chief financial officer come periodically and talk about financial risk and what they're doing with the 5-year with the 5-year plan that they do. Slow down here a little bit, Kevin. Next is legal and ethical compliance. I think last year was the first year our general counsel came and talked to the committee about, certain risk and things that we needed to be on the lookout for. And let's go to external audits, because that's going to be one thing that's coming up. Okay. Under external audits, the external auditors come at least twice a year, sometimes more frequently if they think they need to let the committee know the status of our external audit. They do an entrance conference to let you know that they are there and what they're going to be looking at, any types of audit standard changes or governmental accounting standard board changes. And then throughout the audit, if they feel it's necessary, they will also come and provide updates to the committee. And then finally, they always do an exit conference before they release a report to let the committee know, how the audit went. Typically it's a unqualified opinion, but there might be some issues that they need to bring to the committee's attention regarding compliance with major federal programs or something along those lines. So you can continue on, Kevin. I believe that's the last category. And that is the last category. What I didn't include is both the external auditors and myself. The internal auditor does it very infrequently, but the external auditors might have a need for some type of an executive session, something that needs to come to the committee's attention, but through law is exempt from open sunshine laws. That doesn't happen very frequently, except for the entrance and the exit conference, but there might be a reason for something like that. And as I said, it happens really infrequently with the internal auditor. So basically, that is an overview of the audit committee calendar. Not too many changes from last year, except for last year we did have some new members who I did orient. This year we do not. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Madam. Auditor. Questions from the committee? Ms. Beckerly, I heard you.
Kevin, could you scroll up to the risk management section? Thank you. I think that what's there is great, and I'm glad that this is a structured checking in. I think that's really smart. And I don't know that this is the time to talk about this, but I think that one of the things we should talk about when we get to the agenda item about enterprise risk is to talk a little bit about how to integrate that into your process, Carolyn, and at what points, and and your office in terms of decision-making, identification, strategizing. So I don't think it fits here. I think this is fine, but it triggered that thought. So we'll put a pin in it because it's later on the agenda.
Yes, that will be part of our annual risk assessment.
Okay.
Under the office of, under the internal auditor, one of the reports that I bring in June. So as we're going through our annual risk assessment process, which will have a couple of different offshoots this year because we are trying to update the IT risk assessment in addition to the overall organization risk assessment that we do for our department, that would fall under that category. So
Okay.
there's nothing, in my opinion, specific here to call that out.
Yeah, I agree. I just was making sure.
Okay. Any
Other questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you, Madam Auditor.
Sorry, just one
Oh,
quick
wait a minute.
question.
I think
Yes,
Greg
sir.
has one.
Yep. On the risk management, the second inset bullet, information technology, and are we, maybe there's a hidden cell. I couldn't look at it on my PDF either, so I don't know, Kevin, whether there's a hidden cell there or whether the and is extraneous.
I don't think there's a hidden cell. I think we just
Have an extra and?
yeah, overlook something. So
That's fine. Just curious, make sure it wasn't something that I was missing.
no, I don't think there's anything missing.
No, I don't either.
Okay.
But thanks for pointing that out. We'll get that taken care of.
Yeah, I might add though, if again, maybe we'll come to it, but data is maybe embedded in the information technology risk. If not, we might want to think about what constitutes our key risk, but we can chat about it later.
Okay. Because currently this presentation is basically presented by our COO. As far as more of the student data, that will be our, that will be the wonderful Dr. Michelle Klein. I can't think of her title right now. As far as
Accountability, I think.
accountability.
Yeah.
If there was something that the committee wanted to have presented from that area, if you all could think about it and let me know, I could coordinate some, saying when we could get Dr. Klein on the calendar. I know she came, she comes periodically and does updates on various things. But right now we don't have that as a standing report. So that's one of the good things I like about presenting this. So it gives you things to think about, that's not here.
Yeah, I was thinking that might be, maybe as you go through this, as we identify top risk, is student data and performance integrity a key risk that's being managed. So I guess that would be the thought from that area.
And that would be separate from information technology. It would be a separate risk.
That's what I understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so.
It's a really good point, Greg. And I know there's a lot of, it's probably good timing in the sense that I think there's a lot of confusion during this remote learning and,
Right.
yeah, what's being counted, what's not being counted, and it's confusion both in terms of what we're doing ourselves internally and then what the state is doing. And the state is shifting, I think, a little bit. And then what we're doing with the state data, because not everybody took the test. So that's actually a really good idea. Once again, I'm grateful to you guys. Wish I'd thought of it.
No, that's why we have the committee here.
Right.
And one of the things that we might want to expand upon is when we go through the dashboard is what we're categorizing under the COVID validation. So when we get to that part, for me, those types of things are also on our radar. And we are looking at various departments, and student data is definitely one of the areas. But if there, I wish to have, it's like some type of overall, presentation from that area. I can see, get with, Dr. Klein and Dr. Dixon and see about, having that presentation calendared.
Okay, so you'll work with them on that, Ms. Carolyn, and then I think we can add that. I don't think that prohibits us from approving this calendar today.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, and so you'll work with them on that. Then maybe at the next meeting, we'll be able to add that.
I can definitely, I know, I think I saw Dr. Dixon on here, but I could definitely get with them to see if it can be either this meeting or the March meeting.
I'm saying just to add it to the calendar at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
I mean, it could be in terms of systematizing it. It could be on the list of the things we buy annually, ask for check-in. I think that's what we're saying here.
I agree. Yes.
Right.
I agree with you. Okay. Sounds like a plan. See, any other questions, concerns about the calendar? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve this year's calendar for the audit committee?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I'll take the second from Mr. Jordan. Madam Auditor, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, who was the first? Who's?
I made the motion.
That was Mr. Grant.
Okay,
Mr. Grant made the motion. Mr. Jordan was the second.
great. Okay, Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Vajon,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Chair Ragland,
Yes.
and Ms. Beckerly.
Yes.
Okay. The next item are changes that were suggested to the audit committee's charter. And I know that you also all have seen a copy of these changes. And Chair Beckerly, did you want to add anything to the changes here?
Sorry. No, and I believe everyone, Mr. Grant, I don't think we heard from you, and hopefully you got a copy of it because I sent it out ahead of the meeting. But this was where we were adding.
I did see that, yes.
Okay, good. The concept of enterprise risk. And rather than calling it enterprise risk, we defined what the risk was. inadequate or failed internal processes, people, and systems. So I think it's important, and I think we need to vote on this. And then, James, we then need to present it to the board and ask them to approve it. I think that's the
That is the
procedural.
process yes, that's the process as I understand it.
Right. The other thing while we're talking about, and then I think the other thing that I wanted to suggest, and I think Carolyn answered it already, is how do we integrate this new purpose into our process? And it sounds like it comes up during either as a risk arises that we become aware of that addresses these concerns, and then we adjust our plan, or structurally it'll come up during the annual audit plan, because that's when we'll be looking at the identified audits and make sure that they are consistent with this mission of making sure we're keeping our eye on this risk, and maybe adjusting our priorities based on this additional scope of our committee. Does that make sense to everyone? Did I say it clearly?
Yes, just one thought might be just a way, Madam Co-Chair, that the other bullet points are worded, possibly something along the lines of risk mitigation efforts to prevent the failure of achieving, something like that. I'm not trying to wordsmith, but
I don't mind wordsmithing. The performance.
Maybe it's
To provide oversight and governance with regard to the following.
And I would say risk management efforts to prevent failure of achieving the district's mission.
Okay, well, here's my fear. There aren't. What are those risks? Like, what if there's nothing there? I think we're gonna. All right.
That's fine. No, I'm good. I'm good.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
that assumes there's an office in place that's actually doing it.
Let's not split hairs. You're right. We can modify it later on.
Yeah. Well, actually, that brings me to another point. We will have an opportunity to modify it later on, because as Carolyn mentioned, the board is undergoing, they've restructured and repurposed some of their committees and created a few new ones. I shouldn't say they. And we're also in the process of coming up with sort of a template for every charter. So there's consistency. And they're really only modified to the differences between them will really be primarily just a reflection of their subject matter, the area that the committee's overseeing. So we're going to, and I think ours actually, from what I know about this process of coming up with a template, ours was kind of close to where they wanted it anyway. So I think ours will probably have the least amount of changes.
Right.
But nonetheless, we'll be overseeing or reviewing that when it comes up as soon as we get the final template to make sure it all comports. And we'll be able to wordsmith that then and maybe get it a little bit better. I mean, I'm happy to wordsmith, Greg. I'm not pushing back, really. You're okay?
No, it's all good. I'm fine.
Okay.
Does this addition also, or should we at least consider the makeup of the committee and the skill sets that we would potentially want to add or include from from kind of the volunteer committee member standpoint? So somebody with actual enterprise risk management background and skill set, if we're looking for advice in that direction.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that the other thing that James and I had talked about was maybe someone with IT too, right, James? Those are
most definitely, specifically because we spent a lot of time dealing with that last year, and based on some of the things that are going to be proposed budgetarily for the department for the long term, I think that would be helpful as well. I'm
happy to take an action item to try to find actually, if you want, I'd be happy to take an action item to try to find both those types of people. Carolyn, you raising your hand?
I've got
Yes.
Carolyn, yeah.
Okay, so if I'm following you, we're looking at the composition and leadership of the committee, correct? Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Vajon, is to, in addition to, let's see, the committee leadership shall consist of, no, that's the wrong. In addition, committee members shall have collectively knowledge of accounting, financial statement auditing,
Right.
auditing, that piece there. You are proposing to also include experience with enterprise risk management. Am I capturing that correctly?
Yeah, I'm just raising it from a community member standpoint, if we would want to include that as at least risk management to a certain degree. I don't know if what the other members think, at least as a point of this discussion. I think, Greg, I don't know if in your experience, if you had more insight to that.
Yeah, I think having folks have broad experience in risk management in general, I would feel today that our committee has that between yourself, myself, and Mr. Grant. I feel pretty good about it. Now, if one of us were to step away, I think it's a good opportunity to just look at the skill sets that we need within that group.
So I mean,
For the purpose of the charter, excuse me, of the charter, we might want to add some language that talks about that being the.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would just insert the words risk management in there.
Sure.
I think it's a good suggestion.
yes. And we can make that change when we propose both of them to the board at the next meeting. I'm wondering about, is really what we're looking for someone who has a real good eye for systems issues? Or is that the kind of thing that you're saying we already have covered?
Well, here's the thing. We have to guard against setting policy based on the current, makeup of the board or of the committee. We're doing this for the future. And while we have the skill sets that we need right now and the makeup is functioning admirably, I think what we're trying to do here is really, I guess your term would be guardrails, Carol, around the types of candidates that we want to see. And I think, we may find individuals that have 2 or 3 of these, but not all of them.
Sure.
I think the language should be permissive.
I wasn't talking about the language. I was just thinking more about.
Okay.
No, it's just more of a discussion. No, I wasn't talking about the language at all. I'm sorry. I was thinking about Greg's comment that we have people who are really good at risk management at the moment, and that makes sense. And we should think about it if somebody were to leave. And then
Right.
I was just thinking sort of off the top of my head, partly because I know there's a 4th member that we still could find out there or should try to find.
Yeah.
And, I think this enterprise management is from what I could tell, is a pretty broad topic. And my sort of little soapbox within it is, sort of breaking down the silos and how to get our organization to work more collaboratively, because that's just been a difficult thing for many, many years. And it definitely increases the risk that we won't succeed in our main mission, right? It contributes to that. And so that's why it was really just, let's put a pin in it. Is there a certain profile of somebody else that we should be looking for, that 4th person who's like a real guru at analyzing system failures, logistics kind of guy, maybe. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. We don't need to keep talking about it.
No, I think that's good guidance for Carolyn around the types of individuals she may want to consider.
Okay, when I offered to take that job up, I don't really want it. I just hate asking Carolyn to do more things. So I'm happy if that's not my role.
No, that's in the past, I have tried to bring a couple of excellent candidates, if I might say so, from
Yes,
the
yes.
ones that you have serving on the committee right now to the board chairs and now co-chairs and for the board president, and then they take it from there. So I will definitely keep my eyes out. And if you all have any recommendations for anyone that you want me to reach out to, by all means, let me know.
That's terrific.
Okay. So it sounds like the changes that Co-Chair Beckerly had suggested are fine, and then also to include in the skill set risk management, or maybe even go so far as experience with enterprise risk management.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay. Chair, if it pleases the committee, I can clean this up and get this back out to you, and then it'll just be ready for you to vote on and incorporate with the rest of the committee charters when the board gets to that point.
All right, terrific. Probably my hunch is that we'll vote on it first, because I don't know how long it's going to take us to get the charter up and running, and we probably want to get this in place in the interim. It's so few changes, it's not that big a deal. But I'll see what, or James and I will figure out what the president wants to do about it. I mean, it might be too much.
I think if the board is ready to consider it and you're ready to present it to them with the language that Carolyn has for cleaning it up, and I don't see a problem with moving forward with it. It's one item that we will have completed early on, and we can move to the other charters. So as long as there's no unreadiness from the committee, I don't have a problem with that approach at all.
All righty.
Okay, so it's my understanding that we do not need to vote on this for it to go to, we're just approving the language once Carolyn has us with a final, and then that will go to the Board of Education. That is the approach, correct, Madam?
In the past, I think the committee has voted for it to move forward to the board.
Okay.
I think the last time, and I was trying to look back here to see, and yeah, I believe that's how it operates.
Okay. What is your pleasure, Madam Co-Chair?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the committee should take a formal action in order for us to formally present it to the board itself. And I think it's in here somewhere. It says what we vote on. I don't know. Kevin, if you could scroll up and down a little bit. No, it'd be up. Sorry, I should have said up. Authority. Composition and leadership. Okay, can you go down a little bit more? Sorry. Activities. Financial reporting. There should be somewhere where it says review and make recommendations. Oh, maybe it's not there. It'll be in the template in the new one.
Oh, okay. No, I think it, but that's fine. I don't mind.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Once we have final language, I don't mind if the committee approves it and moves it to the Board of Education. There's-
Now or at the next meeting?
No, at the next meeting, because Carolyn's going to get
Yeah.
it all cleaned up so that we have a final draft, and then that will be what we approve. Today, we were just tracking the changes and adding a few things.
Okay.
I'd rather have us take a final look at a final document. But I think what we can do is just agenda voting on the charter for approval to send to the board, and it'll just be official that way.
At the next meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then maybe if the template's ready, we could do that too. Oh, Carolyn's got something.
As we're looking through this, and I might have some more of these, I apologize. If you go to the composition and leadership, it talks about how the committee leadership shall consist of a chair. That has certainly changed. So we'll need to change the language to reflect that now it's the current chair, co-chair, or co-chairs. And I'll have to clean that up so it represents how the committee actually functions. Under composition and leadership, the committee shall consist of 7 members.
Yes. No, that's true. I'm just rethinking my thought about going ahead and presenting it to the board. Maybe we should just wait for the template and then get it all cleaned up rather than doing this twice. But well, let's table it for the next board meeting, the next meeting of this committee. Not table it. Let's set it on the agenda with these changes and then think about, and maybe I'll take the temperature of how close we are to getting the template ready. And that can influence whether we do it once or twice. All right.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, in that case, then we can move on to the next item if there are no more questions on this one. Okay. Next up, we have Ms. Marood, our Senior Executive Director of, and if I get your title wrong, forgive me, Senior Executive Director of Business and Operations. And she is going to go over what has been done regarding some reviews of how our purchasing function operates and what they are, what the board has approved as far as moving forward with having someone come in and look at, how we're currently operating, what are some best practices, and what are some next steps as far as improving that function. So I will turn it over to Ms. Baruch.
Good afternoon. So this came out of an audit and accountability meeting last summer, and out of the audit of the LED lighting audit that was done of building and grounds, and some of the purchasing practices that were used there. So after this recommendation that we do an evaluation of purchasing, we looked at different groups to do it and settled on NIGP Consulting. NIGP is the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing, which is the professional group for public purchasing professionals throughout the United States and Canada. They have an arm that does consulting, similar to what Council of Great City Schools has done for a couple of our departments. And this arm that does consulting is managed by a company called Periscope Holdings. So that keeps it separate from the rest of NIGP, and people work specifically for the consulting arm that aren't necessarily, they might be members or have been members, but they aren't involved in the rest of NIGP. The consultants that will be assigned to do our evaluation are veteran purchasing managers from similar organizations. So large public purchasing organizations throughout the country and Canada may be assigned as consultants for our evaluation. They're going to conduct a high-level review of our policies and procedures for all service areas that purchasing touches. So some of the things that they'll be looking at are ordinances, statutes, procurement policies, administrative manuals, to ensure that our operations are consistent with the policies and with these ordinances and statutes, and that we're consistent with best practices. They'll look at state legislation and how that impacts our purchasing processes and practices. They'll look at any regulatory constraints that we operate under and how they may impact our efficiency. They'll be looking at our district policies and procedures and comparing them to model procurement code and regulations. They'll look at our business processes in the purchasing office. So they'll look at how we process requisitions, how we manage contracts, vendor registrations, all of the actual processes in the office. Then they'll look at technology and whether we're using procurement technology and if we're using it efficiently and maximizing the use of technology for our processes. A couple other things they're going to look at are our customer service practices and the organizational structure and authority. Once they've done all this, they will benchmark us against other large school district procurement operations. So this work will be done in 4 phases. The first phase will be the preparation phase, and we've already started that phase of collecting documentation for them. We'll be meeting with the evaluation team next week. So at that point, we have some stuff ready for them and we'll find out what else we need to gather for them. That phase usually takes 2 weeks. The second phase is the data collection interviews. And during that phase, the members of the evaluation team will meet with and interview procurement staff, some of the client departments that we work with, and any other relevant stakeholders that we talk about during the initial interview. That will be a 3-day process of interviews. The third phase, which is analysis and conclusions, and their assessment will take 2 weeks. And during their assessment, they will look at potential process improvements, roles and responsibilities within the department, the procurement organizational structure, staffing in the purchasing department, use of technology, best practices, our policies, any performance metrics that we use, customer service, and then the value of procurement for the organization. Finally, final phase will be report generation. So in 2 weeks after the analysis phase, we'll have the draft report, and 2 weeks after that, the final report. So grand total, this evaluation will take us 8 to 9 weeks until we get the final report from the evaluation committee. That pretty much sums up, where we're at and what they're going to be looking at and what this evaluation will look at, and hopefully what results we'll get from it. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them or get answers for you.
Yes, Annette, have you worked with this group before?
I have not worked with this group before. We have 3 of the people that work in the purchasing department are members of NIGP, but no, not worked with the consulting arm of it before.
Other questions from the committee?
Annette, did you say that this organization has done this before for other large school districts? And did they give you kind of an indication of how the results kind of broke down with some of the other organizations?
They've done this for, so they gave us a list of several large organizations that they've worked with. A couple school districts that just come to my mind without looking at the list. I know they've worked with Austin schools in Texas. They worked with the DC schools. And just offhand, I can't remember other school districts. I just remember those 2 sticking out. As far as what their results were, I really couldn't tell you that at this point. I can try to get that information if you want me to.
I have a question about organizations that weren't schools, other non-public large purchasing entities.
So they
Or
have
public, not non-public.
They've done work for city procurement organizations, for like the airport, and that kind of organization. Also a lot for higher education, a lot of universities and colleges.
I actually think that having both those perspectives is probably a little more helpful, because I think it might lead to a little more creativity. Seeing, how it's done in a similar but not the same industry. you might be able to borrow some practices that wouldn't be available if all they were looking at were, or wouldn't occur to them if all they were looking at. So I think that's a positive, actually.
Yeah, I would agree with you there because we tend to be kind of in a niche with people that are in our same organization, and we can learn a lot from people that are out of our organization.
Yeah, I feel that way about hospitals. I see a lot of analogy between the functions of a hospital and the functions of a school district. Sort of like the medicine part is like the education part, but they still have to have the heat and the light and transportation, and parking and all of those other things that are really common to both and not common to really the mission, other than that they support it.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions for Ms. Maroon? Seeing none, Annette, I want to thank you for giving us this update. It's my understanding that you are retiring.
I am. So it is really pretty timely because as somebody new comes in and takes over the organization, they'll have a roadmap to kind of guide them. And it's an exciting time for somebody to come with having that information that they can base whatever they want to do with the organization on. So I will be gone by the time this is done, but I'll have to tune in and listen when they give their report to your committee.
Well, let me be one of, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands, if not thousands of folks thanking you for your service to this district and to our students, and wishing you well in retirement and well-deserved retirement. Thank you so much, ma'am, for everything you have meant to not just your department, but to the district as a whole. This work is not to be taken lightly, and you've performed admirably, and I am just grateful for your service. Madam Co-Chair, I know you have something that you'd like to say as well.
No, I echo all of James's sentiments. You may not know this, but the first part of my professional life was spent in large, very bureaucratic organizations that were mostly defense contractors. And so I used to work with people in purchasing and all of that. So I have a healthy respect for the magnitude of your job and the complexity of it. And so we thank you for all of your dedication and time.
Thank you.
And enjoy that retirement.
Thanks. And I really enjoyed my tenure here. So I will miss all the people here very much.
Yeah.
But I know there's really good work done here that will continue to go on.
Wonderful.
Amen. All right, thank you. Let me see. I think we are on to item number 3 on the agenda. Madam Auditor, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you for your report.
Thank you. I'll give an overview of the reports from the Office of Internal Audit, and then I will just have the presenters just jump in there and present as their topics come up. First, the request for release of reports. We have no reports that will be coming to you this month, but so just enjoy this little break, because after this, there will be report after report after report. So, and then we will have a review of the status of our quality assurance and improvement program, QAIP. That's one of the things that we do that's in conformance with the Institute of Internal Auditors, where we look at and do a self-assessment of our own performance. That discussion will be led by Kevin Stankowski, and primarily because Kevin really does not lead audit jobs. Pretty much the audit jobs are led by Kevin O'Connor. So it's not as if Mr. Zankowski is reporting on his own work. It's just about as close as a small department can get to having an independent assessment done of the work that we do. So you'll hear some good things and some things that we need to improve upon. So Kevin Sankowski will give that report. That will be followed by me discussing and confirming the structural independence of the Office of Internal Audit, which is another one of the standards that the Institute of Internal audit basically requires from internal audit shops that conform to be in compliance with their standards. And then finally, Mr. O'Connor, who we affectionately call K1, Kevin 1, will give a report on the Office of Internal Audit's activity and dashboard report. It will be a little long this month because we haven't actually reported to the committee since October, but I can assure you there has been work that has been going on. So with that, I will turn it over to Kevin Sankowski.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Welcome. Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. As Carolyn mentioned, I'm going to present some information from our QAIP. As she mentioned, is the standards require that the Chief Audit Executive develop a QAIP system or a program that include both external and internal assessments. If you recall, we had our external assessment in the summer of 19. The next one won't be due until the summer of 2024, since the standards require once every 5 years. We did conduct an internal assessment, though. We do an internal assessment annually in the years in which we don't intend to have an external assessment. We do an internal assessment. We conducted ours this year in December of last year. The objective is typically the same from each year. From year to year, we look to do an evaluation or an assessment of conformance with the IIA's International Professional Practice Framework. And what that is to see, and our operating procedure manual. We take both the standards and our own internal practices, and we apply those to the information and to the activities of internal audit, and see whether or not how we align and whether or not we're in conformance. The results of this year's internal assessment have been reported to the Chief Audit Executive and the Director of Internal Audit, so they are aware of both the scope of what it is we did and the results of what it is we did. And I guess I say we collectively, just rather than I. The internal assessment scope really had kind of three main areas in which I was looking at. I looked at OIA governance documents and practices. And what I did is tried to evaluate the completeness of our operating procedure manual and our other governance documents, namely the OIA charter, looking for alignment with the IIA's International Professional Practice Framework. That includes both their code of ethics as well as the standards to conduct professional practice of internal audit. And then took that and tried to apply that to how do we do our work? How do we do our audit evaluations and our projects, as well as our other audit outputs, and see whether or not those engagements and those other outputs conform with that framework. And then the third portion was really an examination to see where do we stand in remediation of the external assessment items we had back in the summer of 2019. That included a companion letter of comments that had some suggestions for improvement. And so I did a review to see where do we stand as far as remediating those external assessment items. The internal assessment period covered the period of July 2019 up through November of 2020. So we did pick up from where the external assessment left off and brought it as far present as we could up until the time we were going to do the examination. That included a scope population for audit projects of 9 audits. About half of them, 5 of them were done in our new audit management software system, and 4 of them were still done in the old hard copy method. We're kind of in the transition period there, moving to our audit management application. We did not include follow-up reviews that are outputs of OIA, but they're not really engagements that required an assessment of conformance. So they were not included in the scope of what it is we looked at. As far as the tools we used, the practice aids I used, there is a peer review guide that I used, put out by the IIA. It's a Red Book peer review guide to evaluate our OPM, which is kind of a review of our quality control system. And then the Association of Local Government Auditors produces a peer review tool as well. And within that tool, they have a review form to actually review assurance engagements. So I use that as the tool to evaluate our engagements. Significant results that were noted, really only two significant ones to report to this group. One is that our IA charter does not contain certain content that's called for in the standards. Now, we achieve the functionality or the functional reporting that these things call out for. However, they're just not called out for actually in the charter. One of them is to demonstrate your functional reporting by stating that the board approves decisions regarding the appointment and removal of our chief audit executive. And the other is to demonstrate functionality reporting, the functional reporting by stating that the board approves the compensation of the chief audit executive. Like I said, we accomplish those practically speaking. However, they're not called out for in the IA charter. And so at some point, you'll probably see us come back with an amendment to our IA charter to drop those two provisions in there and seek your approval of that amended charter. And then the other significant thing to report, and Carolyn kind of alluded to it, is that we still struggle a little bit to get the evidence of our supervisory review in our audit management system, as far as getting those reviews documented and having that adequately documented for presentation and to demonstrate conformance. I don't have significant concern that it's not actually taking place. However, part of the advantage of having an automated or an application software is to help us be able to demonstrate that timely review by, you have to click on something in the application that then captures in the system, when you sign off on that review. And so with that advantage and that ability to demonstrate conformance with standards, that's something we're still trying to seek and still trying to make sure we do that regularly and religiously. So the conclusions, as far as regarding the governance documents and the practices, it concluded that generally OIA's OPM and the prescribed practices for our assurance services are complete and they appear to be aligned with the IIA professional framework. As far as application of the governance and practices, a couple of things we did notice. We actually improved, I think, our consistency in engagement content and structure. I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that we moved to the application software, which then allows us to build a template of what our audits look like and the content that's in them. So I think we've improved our consistency in the engagement content and structure. With the audit management software, we've been able to better integrate the risk assessment and audit plan as well, because those functions take place within the application themselves and they are an integrated functionality. So I think we've improved in that area. But as I mentioned, we do continue to struggle to effectively document our supervisory reviews in the work papers by the Director of Internal Audits and our Chief Audit Executive on significant engagement areas, something like planning, audit program steps, reporting, and wrap up. Like I said, I'm not concerned that those things are not taking place, but wanting to make sure that we get into a better practice of documenting that within our system. And then as far as the external items, or the items that were reported by the external assessment and our remediation of those, we've put together some strategies for how to remediate those. We're still looking to get those incorporated into our OPM, and they also involve incorporating some changes into some of our practice aids based on the suggested remediation, but that is still in process as well. Suggested action steps as a result of the internal assessment. One is the language modification to the IA charter. As I mentioned, we'll probably bring that back with those changes and ask for your approval and consideration, and then recommendation to the board to adopt that charter, that amended charter. And then develop some strategies to improve our documentation of timely engagement, audit work, and work paper reviews in our audit management system. One of the things we've done is there is functionality within our system to have automatic notifications when certain things are completed. And so we've deployed those automatic notifications in our application, which then will hopefully generate more timely notification of work that's complete so that it can be more timely reviewed and documented as having been reviewed. We're also developing some strategies to enhance engagement structure as far as definition and engagement process, progress and communication, trying to do maybe a little standardization and make some definitions clearer of what certain events that take place, when they should take place, and things of that nature. And then we're hoping to expand the use of the audit management application scheduling and reporting features. I mentioned that the risk management and, the risk assessment and the audit plan are integrated functions. So is the scheduling and the reporting functionality of the application. And we're hoping to maybe make better use and enhancing our ability and use to integrate the scheduling and reporting with the rest of the application. And then finally, the last suggested action step was just to get the suggested remediation strategies for the external assessment items, just get them built into the OPM and get them built into our effective practice aids. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Yes, so Kevin, if possible, could you kind of summarize your report for us and get us a document that really kind of articulates those high points as well as these suggestions that the committee is going to undertake? I would imagine that we'd be able to get that charter language in by the time we come back with the work that Madam Auditor is already going to be doing on the charter. We could include that, but I'd like to have some sort of a document that talks about everything that you just kind of addressed here for the record. If you could get something like that together and send that out through Madam Auditor to the entire committee, I would really appreciate that.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kevin, is the external review, when will it be complete?
Our next external review is due no later than the summer of 2024.
2024, okay. And the last one was completed just?
The summer of 19.
19, okay. Were there any action items in that report?
Not formal in the report. It was in their companion letter.
Got it.
And that's what the three items that we have in the companion letter are the items that we've got some strategies to amend and modify in our OPM as well as some of our practice aids.
Yeah, it might be, to follow on with Chair Ragland's comment, it might be good maybe just to, at the next meeting, maybe left-hand column recommendations that they had and right column actions being taken with anticipated completion dates, just so we don't lose track of the 2019 recommendations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you for that, Mr. Jordan. Ms. Beckerly?
Yeah, I wanted to better understand this whole external items process too. So I think if that were on the agenda at the next meeting and you had a chart that, and I could ask my questions then, that'd be really helpful. Agree about the two provisions that need to be in the charter. If it can be in the charter that's proposed at the next meeting, that would be great. Either way, we'll catch it when we standardize our charters as part of that process. Okay, again, this is like, I'm sorry to still be asking remediation questions, but evidence of the supervisory, the third thing. At first, I thought you were talking about evidence that our audit plan took into account what supervisors in the organization were telling us their risk was, but you're talking about internal to your office.
Yeah,
Correct,
I can
into
use that, Kevin.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Kevin was being very, very, very kind. Basically, what it is Carolyn trying to adjust to electronic versus paper. I don't regret moving to the electronic work paper, but it has been an adjustment. We have turned on the notification feature. So if, for example, one of the segment managers
has completed something, it will go to the Director of Internal Audit to review, and Mr. O'Connor will do his review. And then the complete section will come to me for my review. We're having some growing pains. Sometimes I wasn't shown as part of the team. So they're thinking that they're sending me notifications. And I'm,
Right.
hey, I'm not getting notified, that this section is done. And then I would call Mr. Sankowski, and he would pull up, he would go into teammates while I'm in there to kind of help me figure out what's going on here. And it's like, oh, well, you weren't assigned a role when we actually set up the audit. So therefore, they think you're sending you notifications, but you're not getting notifications. So that was one of the holdups. So we kind of worked through that. Another thing was, and I don't know if I think it was a issue on the vendor. When they would when I was getting notifications, I would click on the notifications, and instead of taking me to the section that needed to be reviewed, it would take me to the overall internal audit screen. And then I would have to work my way back to what needed to be reviewed. So we worked through that, and now we have that working. So in addition to just knowing that I always need to be part of all the engagement so I can get the notifications. We're also, Kevin has so generously volunteered to work with me weekly on certain functionality of Teammate to bring me up to speed. I mean, I don't want to discount it because I am a stickler for timeliness, but I also, I get to it and at one point, I just sent an email, hey, I'm having problems getting into, the application. I'm going to send an email, somebody incorporate it so we can show that we did this step. So we're still working through those type of issues as far as, me and Kevin. So hopefully that, gives a little bit more detail as far as the supervisory review that goes on as far as internal audit is concerned.
Thanks, that helps. I mean, I really was more concerned about which supervisors, but your honesty is appreciated.
Yeah, all of this is about our internal process for auditing and conducting our IA work.
And we take, hopefully by us reporting and the amount of time that, Kevin spends on this demonstrates that we do take this serious. Everything that we're recommending to other departments, we're doing ourselves. So, and I appreciate the comments as far as, there was one issue that we actually had to take to legal as far as a recommendation that came from the external review, because I wasn't sure that we could legally, be in compliance with what was recommended. So that's why, these things are taking a little bit longer to address than what I had hoped for, but it's not something that I want to see repeated when they come back in 2024. And if it is, at least I will have, well, according to our legal counsel, this is their interpretation of this law in Ohio.
Well, I think your point is well taken, is that you're doing with your own organization what you're doing to others, and there's an integrity there that we really should appreciate. So thank you.
Any other questions finally for Kevin? Kevin, thank you.
You're welcome.
Reporting out, we'll be looking out for that document and looking to speak with you again next month or at our next meeting.
Very good.
Madam.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Madam Auditor, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Kevin O'Connor, who's going to give a report on the internal audit activity. I'm sorry, it's not Kevin, it's me. I was looking ahead. Okay, the next item is confirm the internal audit structural independence. So if you will bear with me, and you'll kind of see some of the things that Kevin was addressing they're happening in the organization. We just did not have them in our charter. So if you'll bear with me, I'll just go ahead and read what the standard is. Okay. Internal auditors, okay, organizational independence, standard 1110. The chief audit executive must report to a level within the organization that allows the internal audit activity to fulfill its responsibilities. The chief audit executive must conform to the board at least annually the organizational independence of the internal audit activity. So what I have done in the past is I report to this committee. If there's any questions that the committee has, I address those. And then at the next board meeting, I conform to the board the organizational independence of their internal audit function. So here is the IIA's interpretation of what organizational independence looks like. Organizational independence is effectively achieved when the chief audit executive reports functionally to the board. Examples of functional reporting to the board involve the board approving the internal audit charter, approving the risk-based internal audit plan, approving the internal audit budget and resource plan, receiving communications from the chief audit executive on the internal audit activities performance relative to its plan and other matters, approving decisions regarding the appointment and removal of the chief audit executive, approving the rumination of the chief audit executive, making appropriate inquiries of management and the chief audit executive to determine whether there are inappropriate scopes or resource limitations. Based on what I have just read to you, I am affirming that the internal audit organizational is independent based on the IIA's interpretation. Everything that I have just read to you that is supposed to be reported to the board or conducted by the board is happening and has been happening for at least since I have been here. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding my statement of organizational independence for the Office of Internal Audit for the Columbus City Schools.
So if we could get a copy of that, Madam Auditor, I think this along with what Kevin is going to be sending us would be helpful.
If I may, Chair Ackland, just also maybe going forward, Carolyn, to make it easy, what I've seen done and what we do, quite frankly, outside of where we report, which is shows up on the org chart, I report to the audit committee, I dot to Kurt Walker, our CEO, is I have an affirmation page in our annual plan that just states what you said. It says the independent audit function is independent and objective in its duties. And then I have a statement that says I've reviewed any potential conflicts of interest with my team, which you'd be able to do with your team. And just it's a simple one. Ours in some cases gets become two because we do hire folks from inside the company that we have to manage independence on. But that may be an easy way to do this going forward once a year with your annual plan.
Now we before I come to this committee, I do get signed statements from all of my staff where we look at all of our engagements and we look at any, like I said, I do have one staff member who has a relative who works in a department. So, we're all aware of that and we make appropriate adjustments. So we are doing that. And I can certainly incorporate a page with the risk assessment. I would still like to just verbally affirm, that to the board.
Oh, I think that's critical because I make the statement as well, and I'm sure Ilya does with his team, that there's no situations in the past year where I've not been able to have access to books and records. I've not been able to get information from management. Management's been responsive, and we've had no disputes over or scope limitations in our works. So I think verbally those types of things are very healthy for us to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, you're saying both, right, Greg?
Yes, I think both is
Right.
good. Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I like the idea of having it documented annually as well, that this
Yes.
affirmation has been made, and then that becomes a regular thing that we do.
It actually makes it easier for your next QAR as well, your external review. That way you can document compliance with the standards by, you can say, here is where it is within our annual communication to the audit committee, and the minutes can reflect the fact that you
said it.
stated the objectivity and independence and free access to books and records and discourse with the superintendent and her leadership team.
Right. Good suggestion. We can
Thanks.
incorporate that.
Carolyn, do you ever talk directly with just the board or just with the committee members, outside of management? And I know as an external auditor, that's one of the things that we always do is to have that separate communication to make sure if there's anything that you're unwilling to talk in front of management, that you had that opportunity to talk directly to the board or to the committee.
I do, but not very frequently, just because of the sunshine laws. I try not to make sure that I don't run afoul, of those. And if I'm going to have, like a actual conversation with more than 4 of you or 4 of the board, I make sure that, there's nothing that could get the district in trouble. So I don't know if that answers your question. I typically don't do it. I know there are some organizations where, like, right before the meeting start, the chief audit executive might go into an executive session with the audit committee. We don't do that because there's so many limitations as far as what we can actually go into executive session for because of the sunshine laws.
Gotcha. Okay.
As I have said in the past, if there were any type of scope limitations or anything that, did concern me that I needed to bring to the committee, I would, make sure that the committee chair and co-chair is aware of it and, move forward appropriately, but I have not experienced that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Tim, are you getting at sort of the flip side of that, which is, I mean, you could have a board member trying to constrain scope inappropriately. And so that affirmation is important
Normally
to say that.
it's something that where management is trying to constrain, maybe her access or her reporting to members. So you just want to make sure that there is no limitation, from that standpoint.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, do you see value in Carolyn communicating with board members?
You have, as Carolyn just mentioning, you may have sunshine laws that may interfere with that. So as long as she feels there's adequate methods for her to communicate that, I think we're
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, I mean, because the sunshine laws don't apply to less than 4 people. So, I mean, I guess what I was trying to find out, if you saw value in her checking in with individual board members just to have sort of a ongoing communication or somewhat regular communication with the board. But I think that's not what you're driving at.
No, I think what Mr. Grant's getting at is having an executive session. So typically you would see an executive session with the chief financial officer, chief accounting officer, chief compliance, legal, and then the chief audit executive.
Mhm.
But I think
We have our hands tied.
yeah, that's what we understand.
Okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, with that, I would like to take a vote to be able to confirm to the board the organizational independence of the internal audit activity.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to confirm the internal audit structural independence statement made by our auditor.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Madam, please call the roll.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Chair Ragland,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Vajon,
Yes.
this motion carried. Okay, now we are to the report on the Office of Internal Audits activity and dashboard report, which will be presented by Kevin O'Connor, the Director of Internal Audit.
All righty. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Do you need me to pull this up? I can do that if people would like that.
Yes, if you could, Mr. O'Connor, thank you.
Okay, give me just a second.
Kevin, do you need me to drive this one? Or are you okay doing that?
I'll give it an attempt and you can let me know if you need to.
That is the one that I ready to go. So just let me know.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see that? Might take a second.
We're good.
Okay, so I will start on slide 3 here. It's overall status of everything in the hopper right now. The first box there with audits, we have 3 in the planning stage, and those are the IT risk assessments, the work plan development, and the special education audits. The yellow bar column is in progress, and that is the HR benefits audit and the COVID-19 control validation audit. The field work completed is the gray bar. That is capital improvements. The operation fix-it audit, we intend on bringing that at the February meeting. The orange bar is report issued. That's the accounts payable that was presented last October. And then the red, we still have those school audits out there. They're in the delay stage right now. Once the schools are back in session, we'll make an attempt to wrap that up. And again, we'll run that by Dr. Dixon first to make sure it's okay to go in and work with those principals and advisors and the staff that we need to, but we'll let her make that call and we'll report back to you guys. The second section there is the follow-up on issue and ballot recommendations. And those are the ones that are ready for us as management has notified us. We've made those assignments and we anticipate bringing those at the March and April A&A, just a report out on those. And then the last section there is special projects. And we have the first one, the blue is Council of Great City Schools HR reports, and that is in the planning stages. And then the orange bar is the QAIP, which Kevin just reported out at this meeting. Any questions on those? And really pages 5 through 9. So this page, just different formats of the stuff I just went over. And then we have the chevrons here. So if anybody has any questions on any of that stuff, I'd be glad to take that now. If not, I can just move on to page 10. Page 10 is just
I have actually, Kevin,
Oh,
can I interrupt for a second?
absolutely.
I'm sorry. I was,
respectfully.
no, I had muting problems. What's the topic or the scope of the special ed audit?
Basically, we're looking at IDEA and compliance issues with that. And with IEPs, some of that completing the IEPs timely, making sure we're getting signatures, because with this COVID, we've had to go to electronic signatures on a lot of stuff.
Right.
So that's one of the new items that we're working on also for that audit. So
compliance other than signatures, what other sorts of compliance issues? I mean, because there's a whole, sadly for you all, I was a special ed teacher.
Correct.
So there's a whole realm of things we could be checking about in terms of.
And we were trying to be very specific with our objectives on that audit. Because of that, we could get scope creep very easily. And we found ourselves doing that as we were developing the objectives. If I can call Terry Burchek to report on the objectives, she's working with that audit right now. and she would probably be in a better spot to give you specifics on the objectives. So if Terry's available to check in, that'd be great. If not, I
Yeah,
will-
a part of my concern to your point, Madam Co-Chair, we've heard a lot around compliance with IEPs over COVID and whether or not the program that the young people are supposed to be engaging in is being implemented with fidelity throughout the pandemic. I'd be interested in knowing if that is a part of, or if that is an objective that you're looking at, or if the department has the capacity to look into that. I think when we're talking about risk, we've got a lot of students who are on these plans, and we've been out of the building for almost a year now. And that is one of the, smoldering issues that, my child has an IEP and I don't know what they're doing with it. And I don't see evidence of my child's IEP being followed. I mean, we hear that consistently coming from our parents. And I think that is a tremendous risk to us. And so, yeah, I'm very interested.
Mr. Ragland, thanks.
I have an idea.
Oh, I just pulled up the objectives that I can go over specific objectives.
All right, does
Yes,
it make
sir.
more sense that we put this as a topic for the next meeting? This particular audit? I don't know. I mean, I know that this is sort of a where we are.
It's a
And I'm
one-off. It's
afraid
a
that we
one-off
could
from the
get in-
dashboard.
We could get into a long conversation about this, but I want to just leave everybody with this thought. I mean, maybe we should talk about it in detail. I don't know. I also want to be mindful of people's time. But if we do agree to talk about it as an agenda item next meeting, let's spend the next few weeks thinking about it in terms of an area that is ripe to be looked at through the lens of enterprise risk management.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if ever there was, you can keep beating these teachers up over not getting their deadlines, hitting their deadlines, or not, but if we don't look at the systemic problems, why this continues to come up as an issue and why we're getting audited by the state, we have, all kinds of concerns with special ed, we're not ever going to fix the enterprise. We're just going to, get somebody to do better on getting signatures, but the overall thing isn't going to get fixed. So I think that thinking about how to structure this audit to get meaningful corrective actions would be really a great thing to do in the next few weeks till we meet again.
And Ms. Beckerly, that was
Certainly.
one of the reasons why this audit ended up on our audit plan, is for those things that you mentioned and Mr. Ragland mentioned. And they've just been, the risk has been enhanced given the environment we've had to move to. So that's fine. I'll leave it to Ms. Smith to determine.
Let's do this, Kevin, because you did find those objectives. If you could just run through,
Sure.
not go into depth, but just
I have
what
them.
those objectives are.
Okay.
Kevin, I
So,
have,
the first one I have here is to determine whether management identified written business objectives specific to the special education process, identified key performance indicators or metrics to measure management's success toward achieving the identified objectives, and perform risk assessment of the special education process. So that's one objective. The next objective is to determine whether sufficient relevant guidance related to, this is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which I'm calling IDEA, exists to guide and direct management and district staff in carrying out the special education process. The third objective is to determine whether the district is in compliance with IDEA, identification and evaluation of potential students with disabilities. The fourth objective is to determine whether the district is in compliance with IDEA. This piece focuses on IEP elements and implementation. And then the last one is to determine whether management performs monitoring of special education processes. So those are the objectives we currently have for that audit.
Can you send them to us after the
Sure.
meeting?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, this is Carolyn. What I would like to do is probably have a conversation with the chair and the co-chair before the next meeting on this. You know, we'll get you out the information, and hopefully I can get a better understanding of where your thinking is, you know, before, you know, the next meeting in February.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All righty. Is it okay to move on to slide 10 then, Ms. Beckerly
Yeah.
and Mr. Ragland?
Oh, actually, no, I have one more question. Sorry.
Problem.
The HR and QIAP, they're out there as special projects.
Yes,
Is the size of the bar relative to effort, or just how many projects there are, 1, 2, and 3?
I think that bar grows automatically as we change the number in the Excel spreadsheet that drives this document. So I
Got
think
it.
one is just one, and
So
then
it's just one.
try and
Okay.
measure up 3. I think that's just a couple,
Got it.
couple more. All righty. So then slide 10, and again, feel free to slow me down or stop me if I go too fast. That is any additions, deletions, or adjustments to our annual audit plan. And at this time, we don't have any. So slide 12. This is our OIA audit recommendations. This is the Treasurer's Office and Business and Operations follow-up on their issues that were shared at the June and September 2020 meetings. Again, we were hoping initially when we rolled this out to have academic present theirs this month, but given what they have on their plate right now, we've decided to push that back a couple of months while they worry about getting everybody back in school. So that is coming. Any questions on that slide? And the ones ready for OIA review, the high and the medium, that's 41 issues. We haven't bitten off that many, but we'll probably have 25 to 35 that we're going to be looking at and reporting out in March and April. Okay, slide 13. These are the external audit recommendations. So these are other jobs that didn't come off of our audit plan, but were reported to the district that we're following up on.
And if I could jump in here, we will probably be removing the PDK because that is an audit that I know that the superintendent is going to be reporting out to the board. It was on the agenda for the prior board meeting, but because there was so many other items and it was such a long meeting, it was delayed. So they're doing that. And one of the things that we don't want to do was to duplication of effort. So, you know, after I have a conversation with Dr. Dixon, you will probably see us remove this from our reporting unless, you know, Dr. Dixon or the board for one reason or another wants us to do some type of, you know, follow-up activity related to this. So that will most likely come off. And then I'll just leave it at that right now.
All righty. And then we'll go to slide 15, which is our non-audit activities that have occurred since our last meeting. And these are basically staff professional development events that we've attended and gain knowledge, and helps us stay in touch with emerging trends and things that are out there. Then on slide 16, we have other non-audit activities. This are miscellaneous. Whoops, sorry about that, jumped ahead. These are just some advising activities, some areas that we've assisted and some things, and district group participation. we have a member of OIA sitting in with the Facilities Master Planning Committee to assist them in any way that we can. So slide 18.
That's quick question,
Yes.
Kevin. Can you go back to that for a minute?
Sure can.
I think getting you guys involved proactively in some stuff like that is a really smart way to go. Because it seems like and I think it happened a little bit with some of the COVID stuff as they were making decisions in real time. They were asking for, well, what if we do it this way? Will there be a audit, compliance concern or that way? Do you feel like you're getting any traction there and being kind of consulted up front when decisions are being made? Or is that something we should be
We certainly
focusing
hope
on?
so. Yes, I mean, there's a couple
Yes,
steps to that. The first step is just asking us to be a part of it, which is fantastic. And then us sitting in the group, as people are not threatened to think, oh, well, OIA's in here, just relaxing that we're all here for the same thing, to partner with you to make it as best as we can.
And we want to know what your input is up front. I mean, that's the goal, I would think.
Yes.
All right, let's put a pin in that one.
All right. And then here we
Because,
have.
all right, I'm going to say one more quick thing. Sorry.
Sure.
Because part of what I'm thinking about, back to that against Kevin for a second, is part of what the board's approach with the new committees are. One of the things is to address culture. And, maybe this is an area where the culture committee and the audit committee could have a very short, focused, ad hoc gathering where how do we fix this so that this sort of thing, we change that culture so that you're seen as another wise person at the table when we're making difficult decisions. So that's the pin I'm putting in this. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. Like to hear that. Then the activity plan for February through April. That's what these are. Just wrapping up field work for the capital improvements, the HR and the special ed, and the issue recommendation verification. We're going to continue planning on the COVID-19 control validation, outsource the IT risk assessments, and the 22 district risk assessment is in its initial stages also. And then ongoing activities, refresh the risk assessment, because when we did that risk assessment, that was back in June. Things have changed since then. So we're just trying to refresh our internal risk assessment to pick up any risk that may have come about since June, and we presented that one that might need to be addressed. And then just work or continue coordination work with the buildings and grounds, equipment and supply, inventory, Council of Great City Schools, HR, audit follow-up, and fraud hotline coordination. And then a couple projects just to update. The annual independence statements, which Ms. Smith had referred to earlier, has been completed by all OIA staff. Those are written statements prepared for her so we can document any possible impairments, either in fact or appearance. So she's aware of that. So I'm aware of that. So when we start planning audits, we don't inadvertently assign somebody to an audit where they have a possible impairment. Like I said, it's either in fact or appearance. And then the next one is continue to enhance utilization of teammate by establishing the protocols for automatic notification when coaching notes are created, audit steps are completed. And again, Mr. Sankowski referred to that earlier in his presentation also.
All right, quick question. By impairment, do you mean conflict? Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep. And then the last slide is number 23, and that's just the staffing and budgeting. So that would conclude my presentation. Did anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Questions from the committee for Kevin?
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kevin.
Chair Ragland.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we adjourn, I do have, I think the agenda shows to include a date for the Auditor of State closing conference, and I just had down
Yes.
March 20th, 21. The Auditor of State has informed me that they would need to meet with us in March to do their closing this year. So I would like to propose that we just be consistent and have that meeting the fourth Thursday, which will be March 25th. The Auditor of State normally likes to meet with us an hour before Audit and Accountability, which would have them meeting with us at 2:30, and the audit manager will get you more information and get those invites out to you. And then we could just go ahead and have our regular Audit and Accountability at 3:30 if that is, if that's okay with the committee members.
Yes, let me ask the committee members if you could do a preliminary check of your calendar. And then if there are any conflicts, please let myself and Ms. Carolyn know.
And I can also, if I can also ask if Mr. Bahoric, if you can let me know of any issues you might have with that schedule, let me know. I don't know if you've been.
I'm just putting it on my calendar as a hold. As we
Yes.
speak. Glad I stayed.
Can I just say, if only I had a conflict?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's after all this time, there was this one item on the agenda that I actually have some input on.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to make sure, so we didn't have that situation again, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
I'm going to put it on, and I'm putting a hold on for several people in my team too.
Okay,
Right
Yep.
now.
thank you.
I'll be
Thank
out of
you.
town, but I'm happy to call in. So not a concern.
Yeah,
Okay.
Carolyn, I'm okay. I'm okay.
All right.
Okay, well, we will finalize that, and Ms. Edwards will, I don't know if she has a hold on your calendars or not, but we will change it to an actual meeting invite, so.
And
There is a hold for the Audit and Accountability Committee meeting, not for the 2:30 edition. So she
Okay.
might just
And we will
edit
take care of that.
already sent out.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan, I didn't catch what you were saying.
nope. So we're talking about March 25th, correct?
Yes,
Yep. No
Oh,
problem.
yeah.
I can rearrange a couple things. I'll be fine.
okay. Okay, Chair Ragland, I don't have anything else for the committee, so.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Mr. Grant. Could you please call the roll, Madam Auditor?
Yes. Okay. Chair Ragland,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Bajon,
Yes.
and Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you all for joining us today. Looking forward to seeing you in February. Really appreciate your work today and looking forward to a great and productive year. Bye now.
Sounds great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
everyone.
Dixon.
Stay
Everybody-
safe.
Everybody stay safe. Correct.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.